Hi, I'm Daniel. I'm a sleep physician. And if you have insomnia, this channel is for you. Don is asking about noise sensitivity. He's sensitive to noise at night and they wake him up, but not sensitive during the day. In this episode, we'll explore why this may be the case. Hi there, hope you're doing really good, and welcome back, and welcome if you're a new subscriber or viewer. I'm back after 4 weeks. I'm saying 4 weeks. Keep saying 4 weeks. I mean 4 days out of town, and excited to be back. So let's jump right in here. And as I want to point out, in particular in this episode, is like not medical advice here to you, Don, or anybody else. Just me sharing some thoughts that I hope will be helpful. And so what happened was actually it was actually this morning. It says 8:41 a.m. I got a message through Facebook. It simply said, "Can I book an appointment?" And I said, "Thank you for reaching out." And I asked, do you have trouble sleeping? I'm guessing so, and let me know. And then Dawn said, "Yes, I've had insomnia symptoms for 28 years and was wondering if you do any telemedicine appointments." And I replied that I don't, but as I often do, I refer to Martin Reed, insomnia coach. And I also said if he has an iPhone or an iPad, I do actually coach nowadays through the bedtime app, Bedtime with a Y, available for iPhone. And there are some bugs there, but I think it's a really good one. So I shared that with Dawn, and then I thought, one more thing. If you want to send me a question, I can make a video or podcast reply, and I think that was a good idea because I think this is a really good question. So Dawn said the following: "My main question to you would be regarding noise sensitivity during sleep causing sleep disruptions. That is, every time I start to snore, it wakes me up. I'm also sensitive to other sounds while sleeping, but not while awake." Now, this may sound like pretty straightforward question, but actually there's a lot that goes into deciphering what's happening here. Now, when somebody says, snoring wakes me up and I wake up frequently because of snoring, that immediately makes you think of sleep apnea. And by the way, it's funny, I don't think I've ever talked about this on the channel, but here's a quick review of sleep apnea. What happens is, and this is my spiel from clinic, which I say like multiple times every day. What happens is that when we're awake, muscles in the airway keep the airway open and patent so we can breathe. But when we sleep and the muscles relax, the airway dilating muscles relax, the airway becomes more narrow. That is normal, happens in everyone. But in some, the base of the tongue base tends to fall back and block the airway. If it is partially blocked, airway is partially blocked, there's still some airflow that causes vibration at the base of the tongue, snoring. And if it's completely blocked, we may stop breathing and then have an arousal, right? That's, in a nutshell, that's sleep apnea. Now, it is not uncommon at all for people with sleep apnea to have some insomnia type symptoms. Typically having a hard time staying asleep, typically like waking up multiple times. Now, what is different from like insomnia, trouble sleeping from sleep apnea, and the classical insomnia, the typical insomnia, is that people with sleep apnea wake up multiple times, but these are brief awakenings. They remember waking up like say 5, 6, 7 times even, but then they wake up, turn around, fall back asleep again, wake up again, fall back asleep again. These are brief awakenings versus, primary insomnia or typical insomnia, where it's more like you wake up wide awake and now you're awake for like an hour, 2 hours, even more, and you just can't go back to sleep. People with sleep apnea typically have no problem going back to sleep quickly. So that gives you a clue whether the insomnia is primary insomnia, like, problem in and of itself, if you will, or secondary to sleep apnea. That was one of the first things that came to mind. So I would say to anyone that has like more of these like frequent brief awakenings, and particularly related to snoring, I think the first step is to look into that. Do you have sleep apnea or not? Treating sleep apnea definitely can help with what you think is insomnia type symptoms, like, you know, somebody that even like have a hard time falling asleep, you wouldn't think that is a sleep apnea symptom, but it can be, you know. And I believe that it's because like your body almost gets an aversion to sleep when you're waking up choking all the time, so it doesn't want to sleep, if you will. So that's one thing that came to my mind reading this now. Second thing is like when somebody says, I've had trouble sleeping like since I was a teenager or like my whole life, and Dawn says 28 years here, then then that makes you wonder like, okay, well, if this person has sleep apnea, is that really what is causing the insomnia or not? You know, if somebody has had trouble sleeping since they're teenagers, it's a little bit less likely that it is driven by sleep apnea. Still, I would say for somebody that's like, I wake up snoring wakes me up, I still think the first step is to look into the sleep apnea. And what I mean by that, well, I mean, you know, talking to somebody, seeing a doctor, getting evaluated, and probably undergoing a sleep study, which, by the way, nowadays is done mostly at home sleep testing. And the way I would approach it, if somebody has both sleep apnea type symptoms and insomnia type symptoms, and we do a sleep study, is that if the sleep study is normal or shows like minimal sleep apnea, then it's, you know, let's say it's normal, then it's like, okay, let's treat the insomnia. If it's like both, like what I'm saying, if it's like mild sleep apnea, then it's kind of a judgment call. But if it's more like moderate to severe sleep apnea, then I say, yeah, you should really treat the sleep apnea and then see how things go. Now, I want to add a few more things, which is regarding noise and waking up, noise sensitivity. Well, a lot of people identify waking up as a problem and say, I'm such a light sleeper, every little noise wakes me up. And now here's the thing, that everybody wakes up actually many times. When you look at the EEG, you know, the brainwave data from a sleep study, you're surprised if somebody wakes up less than 10 times, judging the kind of brainwave patterns. But what happens is if somebody does not have any trouble sleeping or sleep apnea, then those wakings are usually brief, and people. So what I'm trying to say here is that everybody can wake up relatively easy. It could be a minimal sound that wakes you up, but then you fall back asleep again really quickly, so you don't remember it. So what I feel is that it's not so much that you're being woken up by minimal sounds that is the problem. It's more that it takes a long time to fall back asleep to a point where you remember it, or to a point where like you just can't fall back asleep. You know, it takes such a long time. And in those with like insomnia without sleep apnea, like kind of classical insomnia, that has that like waking up for any little sound and can't fall back asleep again, really what's best to do is CBTI principles that we always talk about on this channel. And if you're new to the channel, of course, like check out the basic stuff, like starting episode 1 and onwards. Meaning you don't have to check every single episode from episode 1. I'll say check out the first ones, maybe the first 10 ones or something like that, and then you can browse and see whatever you think is the most applicable to you. So, Don, I hope this was helpful. If you have any follow-up questions, let me know. Anybody else out there, please comment or email me, Daniel@insomniainsight.co, and we'll be back here tomorrow. Until then, take it easy.